me again. I'm also honored tonight to introduce our next and last speaker. Some of you may have heard him whenever he came and talked on July 4th when we had a tea party. And we've got him back tonight. He is a native of, if I say this right, St. Sue Marie, or whatever. I knew I was going to blow that for him. He's established a practice in 1997 as a dermatology practice here in Mount Pleasant. He knows the Canadian system, having worked under it, and as such, I introduce to you now Dr. Anthony Greco. Welcome.
Public option is not your enemy, it is your friend. Let me also address an illegitimate concern that's being put forward by those who are claiming that a public option is somehow a Trojan horse for a single-payer system.
My commitment is to make sure that we got universal health care for all Americans by the end of my first term as president. I would hope that we can set up a system that allows those who can't go through their employer to access a federal system or a state pool of some sort. But I don't think we're going to be able to eliminate employer coverage immediately. There's going to be potentially some transition process. I can envision a decade out, or 15 years out, or 20 years out.
I happen to be a proponent of single-payer universal health care. A single-payer health care plan, universal health care plan. That's what I'd like to see.
I think if we get a good public option, we can lead to single payer, and that's the best way to reach single payer.
Next week was a guy from the insurance company who then argued against the public health insurance option, saying it wouldn't let private insurance compete. That a public option will put the private insurance industry out of business.
Some government take over healthcare.
Good Lord.
Actually, can I just be, I wanted to ask a question. Please go ahead. I wanted to ask actually two questions to the audience. First, how many Canadians, would Canadians in the room please raise your hands?
We have about 7 hands.
Not as many as I thought. Okay, of those of you who are not on the panel who are Canadians, how many of you think you have a terrible healthcare system?
We see almost all of the same hands going up.
Bad move on my part.
Don't you really like when the veil gets lifted and the politicians actually say what they really mean? I love it. The worst words that we can all hear is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. I hope I get as much applause as Dr. Osborne did. Being from Canada and being a Canadian, I didn't bring my birth certificate with me. But I came to the States in 1995. Probably the major reason I did was to escape the single-payer system. I'll just give you a brief background of my education. I did my medical school at the University of Toronto, and my residency in internal medicine also at the University of Toronto at Mount Sinai Hospital and Sunnybrook Hospitals. And I did my dermatology residency in Montreal at McGill University. When I was finishing my dermatology residency, I met a couple at the House of Blues in New Orleans, and they just kept talking about how great Texas was and how great Dallas was, and they're just going on. They were just going on and on about how great it was in Texas, and I thought, that's interesting. I better check this out. So I went and interviewed with some doctors in the Dallas area and came to Dallas. And I worked in the Dallas area for about 2 years. And was recruited out to Longview, Mount Pleasant in 1997. And I've been here ever since. I hate to bash my Canadian friends and family because I do love Canada very much. And I am a very proud Canadian. But I got my American citizenship in 2005, so I am a dual citizen. And as my wife will attest and my kids will attest to, I'm just a fanatical hockey fan. And I don't meet a lot of hockey fans out here, but we do watch an awful lot of hockey every week, and I drive them all crazy. But anyway, I'm going to give you a brief history about how the Canadian system developed, because the terminology and the language that's being used by the politicians today was identical to what the Canadian politicians used back in the late 50s and 60s. The language is identical. It was almost as if they read the Canadian playbook on how to get to single-payer system. Because, folks, that's what's coming. That is what's coming. And there's no doubt in my mind that once, if any of these bills that are out there pass, we will be at a single-payer system. And the president mentioned within 5 to 10 years. It might even be faster than that. But that's what's coming. So anyhow, in late 1950s, the province of Saskatchewan, which is the center province, provinces are the same as states, but this is the center province in Canada, decided that the government was going to cover all hospital stays for all of its citizens. And so they decided to do that, and the federal government started kicking in what they call transfer payments. And all the other provinces looked and said, wow, that looks pretty good, maybe we'll do that too. So the dominoes started to fall, and all of the Canadian provinces started providing just for hospital care. That's all it was provided for. Everybody still had private insurance, and when they were hospitalized, their hospital care was covered through both federal and provincial government taxes. Then in the late 1960s, a new government got elected in that province, and they thought, well, it might be a good idea to start funding private health care outside of the hospital. And so that led to what we call the single-payer system. All the provinces began funding private health care as well as hospital care. And the federal government gave them what they call transfer payments. And in order to accept transfer payments from the federal government, you had to abide by their rules, and which meant you cannot accept cash from a patient. So all of the covered services in the single-payer system